Hello and welcome to the 10-Minute Project Fix. My name is Gary Wills, I'm your host, and I'm also the founder of a recruitment company called Talent Today that is fast-tracking the recruitment process for the project delivery world. In each episode, we'll be discussing all things project delivery, and we'll be speaking to the very best project leaders and CIOs in the marketplace that have been there, done it, got the t-shirt, and got a lot of war wounds along the way. If you like what you hear from the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe to the channel, and please share or add a comment.
Today's guest is Nick Skelsey, an experienced IT director. I've known Nick now for the best part of 15 years. Nick, how are you getting on? How are you doing?
Hey, Gary. Yeah, I'm really good, thanks.
Good, good. So you've just started a new role. How's it going?
It's good. I'm really enjoying it. It's in a really large distributed business across the south of England. Familiar territory for me, familiar industry, but lots of new challenges, really nice bunch of people. So yeah, getting stuck into it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, as you know, we've got 10 minutes to try and box through as much of this project. We're going to hit a problem and we've got to find a solution. So we'll do the 10-minute project fix, and then we'll do the 60 seconds countdown at the very end for a bit of fun. All right, you ready?
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Right, what would you say is your top 3 tips you would give somebody to ensure that the project has the best chance of success?
So I think firstly, be clear on the vision, be clear on the outcomes of what you're doing this for, what you're going to get at the end. But then actually work backwards to call it a minimum viable product. Yeah, something that is achievable, that is breaking that vision down into kind of bite-sized chunks. And then it's about managing that scope really ruthlessly so that you can stay on track for achieving that MVP. The second would be around communicating. So find and use the established rhythms and routines that are already used for communications in that business. My experience is got a much better chance of landing effective comms when you're piggybacking those existing channels rather than landing something totally kind of new on people. I think thirdly would be, it's a bit of a drier topic, but governance, and don't be tempted to shortcut governance in a project when it's going well. Those early stages, it can be quite easy to think, well, you know, we're in control, the plan looks great, this is all fantastic. But actually, you're going to need those governance routines established with stakeholders, with steering groups, with team members, particularly later on, because you'll have sticky points on a project. So get that governance in, stick to it, even if it feels a little bit dry and artificial, and maybe people aren't used to it at the start of a project, because you'll need it later on.
Excellent. And what's the first thing that springs to mind when you're trying to mitigate risk?
I would say perspective, because a project manager or a project leader's job is really all about risk management. That stands out above everything else for me. So be clear on what your risks are versus what your issues are, and spend your time proportionately in the right place. And that should inherently be around focusing on risk. There'll be issues, you've got to have a routine, you've got to have governance for tackling those issues, which are there here and now right in front of you. But if that consumes you, then you're not really doing risk management, you're just kind of firefighting kind of what's there right now. So I think perspective, and that's also about then focusing on the major risks. So focus on the big ones first and foremost, and be aware that those risks evolve and change as well, because the ones that you identify in that initial risk workshop will inevitably move. They'll be mitigated. You focus on the big ones, you'll lower the risk, you'll mitigate them, you'll deal with them in different ways, but other ones will come along, particularly over the duration of large kind of chunky projects. So yeah, I think it's perspective is the one thing I'd sum up.
Excellent. Okay. And when you're dealing with your stakeholders, sometimes challenging stakeholders, what's your approach? How do you keep them on track?
I guess it's give and take. And by that, I mean, be prepared to put a bit in up front, put in a bit of an investment of time. And even if some of those relationships are a bit challenging, or they're based on historical underperformance that you've inherited, or some real challenges, some real skepticism, stick at it. Focus on building a bit of a personal connection, whatever that is. It's at the end of the day, it's a it's a very personal world, and that's how we get stuff done. So find a way that's appropriate to kind of build that connection, but show delivery, show progress, show that you understand and value their priorities. Because actually it's then much easier to navigate the more challenging times with a bit of credit in the bank. Yeah, ultimately our role as project leaders is to influence, get people to do stuff that they wouldn't ordinarily do. So spend that time, put in the give, and you'll get a little bit of take back later.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you've been on many projects of work. Many of them don't quite go to plan, do they? So when something's falling over, or there's maybe been a cyber breach or something, and it's not quite going to plan, first of all, how does that make you feel, when you're up against it?
Well, I think I'm going to come back to perspective is the key thing here, because if you don't focus on tackling one thing at a time, let's face it, it doesn't feel good. It feels overwhelming, and we've all been there where it can feel like that. So I think the sooner you can get into that mode of breaking down the items into manageable chunks and dealing with them one by one, and absolutely using your people around you. So don't be afraid to get help. Probably the biggest thing that can help to kind of mitigate that. But otherwise it can feel very overwhelming when things start to build up, or you've been parachuted in. Yeah, it can be motivating as well, because everyone likes a crisis now and again, but you can't operate in that mode forever. So breaking it down is absolutely key. Communicating is absolutely key. Getting and asking for help is absolutely critical.
Do you enjoy a crisis?
Well, there's a bit of adrenaline you can get from it, but I wouldn't want to make a habit of it. It's not healthy to have. So we can all deal with it, and we've all had moments, whether it be a cyber issue and or a project that's just kind of starting to kind of creak at the seams. But finding a routine to kind of get through it is important, but you don't want to be in that world for too long.
Absolutely. So coming to the close of this, with finding the solution, what steps do you put in place to make sure you get your project back on track to ensure that it gets delivered on time?
So I'm I guess a believer in using metrics appropriately, and making them very visual. So whether that be velocity charts, burn down charts, showing to not only your team but to those around you, the stakeholders, that you've got some momentum, you're hitting deadlines. Because quite often in a failing project, a team they'll get used to slippages, they'll get used to that being the norm. So if you're losing that habit, or you've not got that habit, you need to build it of hitting deadlines and showing people that you're hitting those targets. Over communicate if need be. Comms is your biggest tool, and that's two-way comms. So engage within the team, engage outside of the team, engage your stakeholder group, and bring that stakeholder group into more regular meetings, whether that be end of day reviews, end of week reviews, whatever it needs to be. It might generate some apprehension, but actually those groups will be able to ask questions that give some perspective. They'll give angles that you wouldn't be able to think of yourself, because seeing wood for the trees and all of that. So get their input. It brings them much closer to the action, because when you've got a tough project situation like that, you'll need that input. You won't be able to fix it all on yourself. So those are things that have served me best in getting out of those sort of sticky periods on projects.
Brilliant. Well, we've actually got a little bit of time left, but you've already hit the project deadline. So I'm going to throw you a little curveball, Nick. Think back to when you were in your late 20s, or maybe let's say like somebody's a project manager at the moment, and they would love to get to a position where they're a program director or IT director. What things would you really sort of share with them and say, if you do these things really well, the world's your oyster?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I think there's a lot around the personal relationships, which is key. So focus on the people, because particularly in an IT world, it's easy to kind of focus on, I need to know the technology, and maybe a lot of people will come from that background, but actually most of these projects, the critical part is going to be about the people. So find those connections, focus on the human element, focus on the things around human behavior that will make that solution either stick or not stick. And then just focus on, driving delivery on a really consistent basis, because actually people need to, I'll take a lot of inspiration from a project leader. And what you generally don't want your project lead to be doing is to be up and down like a yo-yo. Yeah, you want to have that consistent leadership, that consistent tone of voice, the fact that you know what you're going to get from that project leader. So I think if you can find that rhythm that works, that's consistent, don't expect everything to be massively kind of quick wins. Projects can be long slogs, but you eat the elephant one bite at a time. So I think those things would be the things that I'd say have well, hopefully served me well, but would be a good advice.
To be fair, over the years, what I have got to say, Nick, about you is you've always kept that sort of steady, consistent level from when I've known you. So yeah, that is true to your word. So great advice. Well, right, we've hit the 10-minute deadline. So fantastic. We're now just going to have a little bit of fun. We've got our 60 seconds to get through as many questions as we possibly can. I don't think anyone's actually completed it yet, so we'll see how we get on, okay? All right, okay, so 60 seconds. Here we go. Best bit of software.
Google Maps, invaluable.
Best bit of hardware.
Microsoft Teams Room is video conferencing properly done.
Best lesson learned.
Be consistent.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Jam or Marmite?
Marmite, but with cream cheese.
Wow, that's posh. Who inspires you?
Teachers. Anyone who teaches.
Who frustrates you?
Politicians.
I've had that twice. Who keeps you mentally focused?
Who or how?
How, sorry.
Good routines.
Good routines. Your favourite team or sport?
Right now, it's my son's school rugby team because they're in a national final, but otherwise, it's football and West Ham, as you know.
The wrong claret and blue. Tell them how to do it or find their way together.
Together until that doesn't work, and then tell them.
We are done. 60 seconds done. But what we will do is we'll go through the other questions anyway. So work from home or in the office?
Work from home with a bit of office.
Dinner with one person, who would it be? Be careful, Nick.
Other than you or my wife. Richard Branson.
Nice, okay. Favorite brand?
Guinness. My first employer, very close to my heart.
Oh, really? Okay, classic. You been on the Guinness tour then?
Yes. Yeah.
Many a time. Podcast or music?
Probably podcast.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Night owl. Slightly a romantic one I put in here, actually. Ideal retreat?
Well, I'm actually going to Lanzarote for 3 nights next week with my wife. So, yeah, I better say that.
Better say that, yeah. Absolutely. Well, Nick, absolutely fantastic. Thanks for joining us on the 10-minute Project Fix. I hope this really helps people who are inspiring to become one day an IT director or are in a position themselves and maybe struggling at the moment. Nick, I just want to say a massive thank you once again.
It's a pleasure, Gary. Great to catch up.
Thank you. Cheers.
See you later.